Hello everyone, my name is Ryan, and today we're going to take a look at how to do a media change on an Aquify Regenerative Media Filter. The first thing we want to do is shut the system down. How we're going to do that is we're going to walk over and press Stop Filter. So after we've shut down our pump by pressing Stop Filter, the next thing we want to do is come to our menu, go into our Drain and Rinse page, and we want to manually pulse our tire to knock off the media that's on the tubes right now. What that's going to do is it's going to deflate the tire, inflate the tire, deflate the tire, inflate the tire, and that will knock off all the media that's on the tubes right now. And once it's knocked off, we'll drain it out. So what we're going to do is we're going to come over and press our manual pulse button. The tire will drop, and after a few seconds it'll inflate automatically. We want to do this about 5 times or so. And when you press it, you can see the tire will deflate and it'll inflate again automatically. And also, you can come in and take a look at your sight glass, which you'll notice you'll have a milky water consistency because all the perlite now is getting mixed up and knocked off the tubes. So we're going to go ahead and press our manual pulse button a few more times. And now all of our media is knocked off our tubes, and now it's time to drain the filter of the tank itself. Also on this controller screen, it gives you directions step by step on how to do it. So take a look at the directions, read through it, because it'll be a good tool for you as you go through this process. Now that our tank, all the media is mixed up, knocked off the tubes, let's go ahead and drain our filter. Alright, so now we're going to come over to where our filter drain is. And as you can see, we have a few different valves over here. The ones that are going to be important for this step are going to be our main 4-inch filter drain valve and our 1.5-inch media vent drain. So next step, we're going to come in, open up our 4-inch drain here. Now we have to open up our media vent line. What this does is it creates an air bleed that will allow the water to rush down and drain out. Now all the water is going to drain from our tank out into waste. Now what's happening is all of our water from our tank that's mixed up with that dirty media is draining from the filter out into waste. You just want to wait until all this water is drained out and it's stopped draining down into waste. One way you can tell is you can watch the sight glass and you can see the level of the water go down as the tank is draining. So just give it a minute, let all that water drain out, and then we'll move on to the next step. So as your water is draining out of your filter, go ahead and take a look at your tubes. We want them to be clean. So if you see any media or perlite that's still built up on there, in the next step, we're going to fill the tank back up and rinse it out again. This process can be repeated as many times as it's needed until those tubes are clean and we get rid of all that dirty media. So once you're draining your tank, you want to go ahead and take a look at your filter tubes through your sight glass. We want to make sure we're getting all that dirty media off the tubes. So once your water is drained out all the way, in the next step, we're going to fill the tank back up, pulse our tire a few times, and try to get off the remaining dirty perlite that's left on the tubes. This process can be done as many times as needed until your tank is clean. If it's been a while since you've changed your media and you're having a hard time getting that media off the tubes, you can go ahead, take off your manway, go in there with a garden hose, and spray down the tubes manually just to make sure we get all that dirty media off before we load our new media and recoat those tubes. Alright, so after your tank is all the way drained. We're going to come back over to our main 4-inch filter drain valve. And we're going to go ahead and shut it. We want to leave our media vent drain valve open because what we're going to do next is fill the tank up. Water is going to fill up and it's going to be purging air out of the top of this line. So we want to leave this valve open for the next step. So now let's go turn our pump on and fill our tank back up. Alright, so now after our tank is filled, we're going to come back over to our filter drain valve, open it back up, and let this tank drain out again. Again, we're going to leave this valve, our media vent valve, open during this period. So we just got done draining our tank for the second time. We took a look at the tubes and noticed there's still some perlite on them. So we're going to go ahead and repeat that process again by filling up our pump or filling up our tank, mixing up our media by pulsing our tire manually, and then dumping the tank again. One thing to note is typically you're going to have to do this around 2 to 4 times to get all that media off the tubes so the inside of our tank is clean before we add our new media. So if you notice your tubes aren't clean after you drain the tank, go ahead and repeat the process, fill up your tank, and dump it again. So we're going to go ahead and close our filter drain again. We're going to go turn our pump on, fill our tank up, pulse the tire a few times, and drain it back down. Alright, now that our tank's empty, we're ready to fill it back up. Our filter drain is closed. We're going to come over, press start filter. The tank's going to start filling up. Air is going to be purged through our media vent line to our drain. And again, it might be a little bit noisy. So if the speed of the pump is going too fast, go ahead and change your pre-coat speed, lower it down a little bit, and it'll lower some of that noise. So come in, press start filter. Your pump will turn on and our tank will start filling with water. At this point, you can come in and take a look at your sight glass and you'll see that level of the water start to rise through the tank. There it goes. You can kind of guess at this point. Once the water level is up to the top of our tank, we can go ahead and shut the pump off, or you can go ahead and wait until water is coming out of your media vent line so you can ensure that your tank is all the way full. So right here, water's coming out. We're going to go ahead and press stop filter. Our pump is going to turn off, and we're going to go back in and manually pulse it about 5 times, try to knock off that remaining media, and we're going to drain the tank once again. So we'll let our pump shut down. Once that's done, we'll come in, press our manual pulse. We'll do this again about 5 times. Okay, now that we've manually pulsed that about 5 times, we'll go back over to our filter drain, we'll open it back up, and we'll drain this tank one more time, and then we'll check to see what our tubes look like. Now that we've turned our pump off, we've pulsed our tire about 5 times. In an application where your filter is below water level, you're going to have to close your pump discharge valve before you drain your tank. In the application here, our filter is not below water level, so you wouldn't have to do that in this application. But say our mechanical room, our pump pit was below the water level, we'd have to go ahead and shut this. So I'm going to simulate that now for you before we drain the tank. So I'm going to go ahead and shut this discharge valve all the way closed. And the reason why we would do this if we were below water level is if we didn't shut this and we opened up our filter drain valve, we would just start draining the pool, because the head pressure of the water that's above us will just come down, go through our pipes, go through our filter, and out to the drain. So we're going to shut this, and then we're going to go drain our tank. Alright, so now that we drained our filter down all the way, our pump discharge valve is closed, we want to make sure we open that back up. So I'm going to go ahead, open that back up. Now that our pump discharge valve is opened up, the next step we're going to do is we're going to add perlite to our filter. Now that our tank is completely drained, before we add media, we're going to change some of these valve positions. So we're going to come in, close our filter drain valve all the way. We're going to close our media vent valve all the way. Now the next two important valves for this step of adding media, we're going to have our vacuum transfer hose and then our vacuum transfer valve over here. So we're going to want to open up our vacuum transfer valve here. This hose is the one that's connected to our vacuum. This one here, we're going to open 100%. This is the hose we're going to use to actually vacuum our media. How it works is when this vacuum turns on, it creates a suction, and it creates the suction through here, which creates a suction here. So this hose will be able to vacuum in the perlite. And the next step is we're going to go over to our filter controller and we're going to turn on our vacuum. Each filter model requires a specific amount of media. There's a few places where you can find how much media your filter requires. The first place you can see it is on your NSF data plate. There will be a spot where it says media required and it'll give you how many pounds you need to add. On the side of your filter controller, there's also a chart that has all the filter models with how many specific pounds each one requires and about how many bags that is of your 25-pound bags of media. Now, if you have a 12-pound bag of media, ignore that part and just calculate it based off the pounds. Another place you can find it is on your filter controller. If you press menu and scroll down to filter data, it'll also be saved there. So there's a few different places that you can go and find that resource. Also, you can go on our website, aquifysystems.com, and all that information is there as well. So now that we're ready to add our media, we're on our drain and rinse screen still on our filter controller. We're going to go ahead and press next. That will bring us to our page where we're going to add our media. Again, on this page, there's written instructions of what you need to do step by step of this process. So use that, it'll be a good tool. Over here we have start vacuum and stop vacuum. What this will do is when you press start vacuum, the vacuum will turn on, vacuum in all the media that's required. When you're done, we're going to come back over and press stop vacuum. So I'm going to go ahead and press start and then we'll go vacuum in our media. Alright, so we're going to walk over to our vacuum. It should be on. But in the event that it's not on, make sure that your switch on your vacuum is turned on. A lot of people get confused when they press start vacuum. If it doesn't turn on, you got to make sure this switch is on or it won't come on. So I'm going to go ahead, turn this back on, open up our bag. This specific filter is a PMF 48900, which requires 72 pounds of media. So right here I have 3 25-pound bags of perlite, which you can get from us. We stock a ton of it in Dallas. So if you're ever in need, give us a call and we'll get some out to you. So I'm going to go ahead, turn this on, open up this bag, and start vacuuming. As you can see, we have suction on our vacuum. So just go ahead and vacuum in all the perlite that's required. So now that we're done vacuuming all of our media, we're going to go ahead, go back to our filter controller and turn our vacuum off. All right, now that we vacuumed in all of our media, to shut our vacuum off, we're going to come in and press stop vacuum. Once it's off, you can go ahead and press the complete button. What this will do is it's going to take you to the next page, which is our start filter page. So let's go ahead and press that. Again, there's a list of instructions on what our next steps are. Use this as it's a good tool. But the next thing we're going to go do is we're going to go change some valve positions and get ready to fill the tank and put it through a pre-coat cycle. All right, so now we're going to go ahead. The two valves that we opened when we added our media, we're going to go ahead and close those. So our vacuum transfer hose valve, we're going to go ahead and shut 100%. Our vacuum transfer valve here, shut 100%. Okay, for the next step, we're going to fill our tank with water, put it through a pre-coat cycle. The important part here is we have two air vents. Where those are located, one on top of the tank, that same valve that we used when we were draining our filter, we're going to use here. So our media vent drain here, we're going to go ahead and open 50%. Our other valve that we're going to open is our pre-coat vent line. Where this is located is once you come out of the filter, you have your effluent pneumatic valve. There's a T located there, and the pre-coat vent line comes off that T and down to waste. So let's go over here and let's go open up our pre-coat vent line 50%. All right, so we're going to come over here. We're going to open up our pre-coat air bleed. %. The two vent lines, what they're used for is as we turn our pump on and we start filling our tank with water, water is going to fill up our tank. Out of our media vent line is going to be the first part where air is going to come out of, then water. As that fills up this pipe and runs along here to our effluent valve, there's a T up there where our pre-coat vent line is coming off of. So we're basically filling up that whole line, filling up our whole pre-coat line that runs down to our pump as air is purged out of the highest point to our drain. So those are the two valves that are important during this pre-coat cycle. What we're going to do is turn our pump on, let our tank fill up all the way, fill up that whole pre-coat line, and then we'll start our pre-coat cycle. All right, so the next step here, we're going to go ahead and turn our pump on. But before we do that, this is where our tank fill delay button comes into play again. So right now, our tank fill button is on. It's light blue. What that means is it's going to prevent our pre-coat valve from opening and our pre-coat cycle from initiating. The reason why we have this is it gives us time for our pump to come on, fill our whole tank up, fill our whole pre-coat line before we start the pre-coat cycle. So one thing to check here, make sure that your pre-coat set speed is good. So right now, I'm going to do that really quick. Go into parameters. Our pump pre-coat speed is right here. I'm going to put that to 75% and then press back, which will take me back to my start filter page. 75% for a pre-coat speed is pretty standard. If you need more flow or less flow, that's where you would change that during this cycle. So before I start this, I like just to double check. All my valve positions are good. My pump discharge is open, my filter drain is shut, and my two vent lines are 50% open. Once you're ready and you're good, you're going to go ahead and press start filter. Our tank is going to fill up. Once we have water draining from our media vent line, which is your 1.5-inch line, you want to shut that valve. What that does is it forces water up and filling up our pre-coat line. and then the air can vent from the highest point and be draining out to the drain. Once we have a steady flow of water there, that is when we're going to come in and press Stop Tank Fill Delay. Once we press that, the button will turn dark blue. That means it's off, and our pre-coat valve will then open, and our 10-minute pre-coat cycle will begin. So I'm going to go ahead and press Start Filter. Our pump kicked on. This might be a little bit loud because you're going to have air coming out into your drain. Once you have steady water flow through your drains, press Stop Tank Fill Delay button. Our pre-coat valve will now open. Counts down from 5. Now that pre-coat valve is going to open. I'm going to go ahead and shut this media vent valve off. I like to leave my pre-coat vent valve open at this point, just to give it a couple minutes, 60 seconds or so, just to let any of the remaining air in the system get out. So one thing I like to check here is walk over to my drain and ensure that I have a steady flow of water. Another thing to check, you want to come look at your filter pressures. You can notice right now we're at 12 influent, 7 effluent. That indicates that we have some good flow through our filter. At this point, we can go ahead and press our home button. That'll take us back to our home screen. This, we can see our gallons per minute that we're flowing at, as well as our filter pressures. So right now we're running at about 1,000 gallons a minute. Another thing you can check, you can come take a look at your sight glass. You can shine a light in there and you should be able to see good water flow through there. After a few minutes, you'll notice that your tubes will start to coat with the perlite. One thing to note, after you've drained your filter and we're empty, on the first time we go through a pre-coat cycle, if you notice your tubes aren't coating very well, just go ahead, turn your pump off, start a pulse cycle, let it pulse. It's 10 times and it'll restart that pre-coat cycle. Many times on your first initial startup with a fresh coat of perlite, you might have to run two pre-coat cycles. So now I notice we still have good water flow, no air sputtering out of our pre-coat valve. I'm going to go ahead and shut it. I always recommend to shut these valves slowly. And now we can take a look at our filter controller screen. We have about 5.5 minutes left on our pre-coat cycle. We have good flow. We have good pressure. So now we just sit and wait for this cycle to be done. Take a look at our tubes. If you notice they aren't coating well, stop the filter, run it through another pre-coat cycle. So I'm going to take a look at those real quick. And I notice we don't have the best coat on it. So what I'm going to do is come in and I'm going to press Stop Filter. Our pump's going to shut off. Let's let that shut off for a second. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to hit Start Pulse. That's our blue button right on our home screen. What that's going to do is it's going to pulse the tire 10 times and then initiate that pre-coat cycle, and all this is done automatically. So it'll pulse 10 times, it'll kick our pump on, count down from 5, then it'll count down from 5 to open up our pre-coat valve. Once the pre-coat valve is open, then we'll be flowing water. Another thing you can do also on this is once that pump turns on, you can go ahead and open your pre-coat vent line again, just to get any air out of the system that might be there. So I'm going to go ahead and press Start Pulse. There's a little bit of a delay, but after a few seconds, it'll start counting up on our pulse cycles. Our tire will start pulsing, and it's basically to knock off all that media, and then we'll recoat it again. All right, so now that we pulse 10 times, our pump is going to come on. Count down from 5. Again, this is a good point. You can open up your pre-coat valve just to bleed out any air that might be left. Now we can see our gallons per minute are climbing. Our filter pressures are around 12 and 7 again. Now we're going to let this thing cycle and pre-coat for its 10 minutes. Again, you can look in your sight glass and you can see if you have sufficient water flow, and then you'll start to see the tubes coating after a few minutes. After your pre-coat valve has sufficient water flow, again for 60 seconds or so, we can go ahead and shut that valve slowly. Now what's happening is we're running a closed loop between our filter pump and our filter. So water's coming in the bottom of our filter up to the top. This effluent valve is closed, so it stops the flow here, sends water through our pre-coat line back to our pump, and then comes back to our filter. So right now we're just running a closed loop. Once this pre-coat cycle is over, our effluent valve and our pre-coat valve will transition. So our effluent valve will open, we'll start sending water to the rest of our system, and then our pre-coat valve will shut, and then we'll go into filter mode. Once you're in filter mode, the automatic speed control in the filter will take over. So it'll use the flow meter to control the speed of the VFD to try to dial in to whatever our set point is for our system. And now we can see our tubes are coating much better the second go around. So we should be good to go on this one. We're going to let this finish its pre-coat cycle, and then we'll show you what happens once we go into filter mode. The next thing that's going to happen is our pneumatic valves are going to transition. So our effluent valve right above me, that's going to open. Water will start going to the rest of the system. Our pre-coat valve will shut. So right here, effluent valve is opening. This will open here in a second. There we go. There's about a 15-second delay between the effluent valve opening and the pre-coat valve closing. So now we got 3, 2, 1, pre-coat valve closing. Once that shuts, now once this countdown goes to 0, we'll go into filter mode. Now we're in filter mode. What'll happen next is your automatic speed PID control will take over. So whatever your set point is for your system, it'll either ramp up or down the pump depending on what your flow rate's at. So on this one, our flow rate's around 950 gallons a minute. So right now, it's going to slowly ramp up that pump until we hit 950 gallons, and then it'll stay right around that set point.